Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil. I'm Tom Reaoch and your host for the show. I'm talking from the city of Campinas in the state of São Paulo in Brazil, so when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest, Nicole Jansen, she's talking with us from Toronto, Canada. She's the founder and CEO of Discover the Edge. Nicole is like a surprise package at a birthday party when you open up a can and a whole bunch of things pop out. Several weeks ago, Nicole and I were introduced to each other by Dominic Damasky, a person I interviewed on Talk to Brazil in 2014. And actually, through that introduction, Nicole sent me an email, and the can of surprises was in that email. She has co-authored a book, has over 30 years of real-life business experience as a business owner, a coach, a speaker, a human behavior specialist, and a leadership podcast host. So with that, Nicole, thanks for being on and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Thank you, Tom. I'm excited to be here.
And as I said, we got everything popped out of the can. There's so much that I was able to see from the information that you sent me. And right up front, I want to tell our audience that basically you have two sites, and I asked them to pay attention and find later. One is discovertheedge.com, and the other is leadersoftransformation.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Now, I want to ask you one question because there's so much that we can talk about. But today I'd like to talk about one of the things I saw in your information is how to think like an entrepreneur. And I'd like to forget the past and look forward to 2025. How should we think?
Well, to start off with, entrepreneurship is a mindset. A lot of times what, we hear is people around the world getting into business for themselves and becoming an entrepreneur, going from an employee to an entrepreneur. And I honestly believe that every single person is an entrepreneur at heart. Now, that gets conditioned out of us, through school and upbringing and so forth. We learn to conform. We learn to do things in a certain way, to memorize. Entrepreneurship is about creativity. And so, the way I look at it, and that also relates back to my faith, I believe there is a God, it's not me. And so, that God is a creative being. And so as, the Bible talks about we are created in God's image. And so he's creative, therefore we are creative. And what do entrepreneurs do? Create. And so we create all the time. You see children who come up with these wonderful ideas and creations that we could never, as adults, oftentimes we couldn't imagine that they would come up with this. And it's incredible. And now the reason why I say that is because if you imagine maintaining that creativity, that innovation, that world of possibility, and now apply that in the adult world, that to me is thinking like an entrepreneur, is to imagine what is possible. Now, I come from an entrepreneurial background, so my parents owned businesses and started business. My dad was always, seeing the possibility in ideas, and actually one of those businesses led him to Brazil and to invest in commodities and so forth. And so, the entrepreneurial spirit is really that. It's a spirit inside you. It's a mindset. And so even though, even if there are people listening that work in companies, you can have an entrepreneurial mindset. You can think like an entrepreneur where you own your own business. And the reality is we all own our own company, and it's called you.
That's true.
It's called You Inc.
That's true.
So when we go out and somebody goes out and looks for a job, what they're selling as their product or their service is them. It is their skills, their abilities, their attitude, all of what they bring to the table. They are an asset to the business. And so, when you start to think like that, now it's different because now you're in the driver's seat. I remember a gentleman by the name of Jim Harris. He said there are no secure jobs, only secure people. And what are you secure in? You're secure in your own abilities. You're secure in your not just talking about skills, but I'm talking about what you're capable of doing.
Right.
And even if that means I'm able to figure it out. Entrepreneurs are able to figure things out. And I remember at one point I worked with a group of lawyers years back on a project. And alongside with having a business, they had asked me to work with them. And so I was actually an employee, but because I came at it with an entrepreneurial mindset, I was extremely successful there, and they literally just said, well, just go with it. And I was paid the highest, actually. In fact, we moved the whole department to a larger firm, and they said, we can't possibly pay you all this. Because I was getting paid much more than people that were at the same category, if you will, of non-lawyers, right? Paralegals and so forth. They had kind of categorized me there because that's
we've all heard that before. That's back to what you said about conformity. People put you in a box and say that box is worth whatever, and no matter how much energy and intelligence and ambition and creativity you have, you can use it, but the value of that box, the price tag on that box is whatever. And I think that's frustrating for anybody, and that's one of the reasons to go out and do your own thing.
Absolutely. And that ultimately, I ended up going on my own. Well, no, I owned a business on the side, but I eventually left there because the company, it was a huge law firm in Toronto that we were working for. And so I came along, as I said, from a smaller firm to this larger firm with the lawyers. And because of this constant concern that they had, I started to lose interest. And then they wanted to cut. They wanted to put me on a salary, and they wanted to reduce the salary.
We've heard that before too, right?
And and I finally said, to the lawyers I was working with, I said, I'm here because the greater compensation is the learning. Right. I'm no longer able to learn anymore. I've maxed out. The next step would be for me to go to law school and come back. Now they're cutting this, the pay. They're, doing all these things, putting all these limitations. You know what? Now I'm experiencing the law of diminishing returns, and I love you guys, and it's great. It's been great working with you, but I've got to move on because my mindset is more valuable than any kind of money that I could make from that project. Because with my mindset starts to get constricted, then I'm going to lose my effectiveness. I'm going to lose that creativity, that innovation, that.
Now, how can we take that all forward and understanding that? How can we take that forward and look out to 2025? Next year.
Great question.
Where you said you could go. You're in the driver's seat. You're sitting in your car. You're going to turn it on. Where are you going to go, and how are you going to get there?
Well, I think that business.
Maybe you're going to even be in a car that you don't have to drive anymore. We're going to be in cars that are going to take. We don't even know if we're going to be in cars.
Exactly. Well, and that's just it. Business is changing so quickly. On my podcast, I recently just interviewed a gentleman who's talking about lifter leadership and lifting other, the people around you, uplifting your business, uplifting your customers. It's a whole shift that's happening in business. And so looking out to 2025, if someone has forgotten that entrepreneurial mindset that they were born with, they got to go recapture that. You got to bring in that creativity, that innovation, that adaptation, resilience. We're hearing a lot of these words, agility. Those are the skills that are going to be necessary to be successful in business going forward. Capacity. You got to increase your capacity to learn and to adapt. And so, what does it look like? That's a great question. Who knows? There's going to be technology involved. We know that for sure. We may be driving our own cars, or maybe we're going to be in driving cars,
Right.
autonomous cars. Maybe AI is going to be involved for sure. I would watch and listen for people like Peter Diamandis. Watch what Elon Musk, watch what some of these trendsetters are doing, because that's where the future is going. And
Yeah, well, I
embrace
think
it.
you're right, because I
The
think
entrepreneurial
today,
mindset
instead
is
of sitting
embracing
back
it.
and looking, most people, and part of my feeling is that they're awestruck by some of these persons that you mentioned, and tend to think, well, I can't do that. When maybe one of the key words that we need to look and look towards and have is courage, literally to get up out of your
Yes,
chair and do something, better than
yes. Be
sitting and
excited
watching the
about it.
world go by.
Yes, be excited about it. Look at it as an opportunity as opposed to an obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the difference between the people that are moving forward right now and will in years to come are those that are excited, that are, as I said, they're increasing their capacity to learn and adapt, versus being in fear. There's a huge distinction coming from a place of abundance versus a place of scarcity. Entrepreneurs come from a place of from a place of abundance, not scarcity. And
Mm-hmm.
in that abundance, it doesn't mean that they're in delusion. They obviously need, there's calculated risks that they're taking, and they need to think those through. But coming from a place of scarcity is fear, is competition. There's not enough out there. I'm a big believer. I talk about, if you want to create results, if you want to create impact in the world, your mindset and your beliefs that drive your mindset are so very important. What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about others? And what do you believe about the world around you? If you believe the world is abundant and there is a world of possibilities, you're going to look at things very differently. And you're going to look at them as an entrepreneur.
And how do you look at that? If you're mentioning the world, and the world we tend to think is one place, but it's several places. You were born, you're Canadian, and you also have a working address and do business in the United States. And you're a woman, you're a business person. And how do you feel on either side of the border? Is it the same thing or is it different?
Well, I think what we focus on expands. That's been my experience. And so if I focus on the things, like, for example, as a Canadian living in the U.S., if I focus on the negative aspects of what's going on right now and all the dissension, I'm going to stress myself out. And I'm going to be running back to Canada. Except here's the problem. You go back to Canada, and they got issues in Canada, too. Oh, my goodness. So let's say I go run off to Brazil. Well, you know what? Brazil's got its issues, too. Every country has its blessings and its issues, some more, some less. It's what we focus on and how we see those as opportunities.
That's true.
There's opportunity everywhere.
Well, what I see, there are a lot of Brazilians today going to Canada and actually seeing that there are those opportunities there. One of the challenges for most Brazilians when I speak to them is always the weather. It's cold. But that's life in the big city. But there are opportunities, and I see and heard and know of examples. Canada tends to be very receptive to different persons, to diversity, and sort of embraces it. So, but do you go around and say, "Well, I'm Canadian" when you're in San Diego? Who are you and what are you, or does it matter?
Well, you know what? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I'm a global citizen. We're all global citizens, ultimately. But so I'm a U.S. resident, and I live in San Diego, and I happily tell people that I'm Canadian. And sometimes they'll think that's novel, or they'll say, "Oh, yeah," they'll use the word "a" or something, or tell me I say a boot wrong, or whatever. I don't know, with an accent. But you know what? I value my roots, and I also value where I'm going. And so to me, I really do believe my podcast, for example, we have listeners in over 120 countries.
Right.
And I wanted people on the show that come from different backgrounds, because we don't thrive when we're in a bubble. It may appear that we're thriving, but it's perceptive, right? So,
Well,
I had somebody once tell me that I could have 1 million listeners all in L.A., Los Angeles, California, and I'm like, well, that's great, but we're quite in a bubble there when I was living there,
mm-hmm.
and thank God the whole other the rest of the world doesn't operate in the very same way.
Right.
Thank God, but
No,
we
no,
want to
and
get
that's
that
true. And
global
I think that
perspective
is
so we can prepare
exactly
people.
one of the things in marketing is the niche marketing. We have to find our niche, and it's not. I don't want to go after 8 billion people. Uh,
Yeah,
and, if 8 billion people find me, I can't handle that. I'm trying, as you do, try to find your niche. And there are so many
that's
niches
true.
out in the world, and there are people looking and searching, and people find you. And it's better to have
Absolutely.
a quality. You're talking about uplifting. You're talking about inspiration. You're talking about a number of things. This is what I want to say specifically to you. You really inspired me when I received all of your information. When I said I opened up that can and everything flew out. I took some time trying to put everything back in the can. I still haven't put it all back in because I haven't been able to see it all. But what I did see, the podcast that I did follow, uh, and you have podcasts that are audio, that are video, you have a fantastic site, you've put everything together, you've taken your experience and ordered it in a way that has logic, it's easy to go through, there's an abundance of it, and that's good. And I have been using you. We haven't talked until exactly right now. But over these last 2 or 3 weeks, I have been using you as my benchmark. Because what you say, you have to
Oh,
find
thank you.
somebody.
It's an honor.
And I was very happy because at my moment in my life of restarting, that's doing it over, we need somebody who's a successful person. You are a very successful person in what you're doing, and the podcast is fantastic. And that's been
Oh,
my
thank you.
inspiration. I want to tell you that when I go to bed at night, when I get up in the morning, and you brought back some oxygen that I personally needed. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you, Tom, and that's very humbling.
Well,
Honestly,
we're coming to the end of
made
our
my
time,
day.
but I want to leave with you and with our audience. One of these tidbits that were very important that I picked up after this can of things popped out, and has really helped guide me in the confusion of what I'm trying to do. You've actually helped me put things in order. You made a comment in one of your podcasts. You mentioned the divine download.
Mm,
And after you
yes.
coined that, the divine download, and the way you said that, that brought a whole lot of meaning to me, of me wondering, what am I doing here? And why am I doing what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do when many other people say, you're crazy? So I want to thank you for your part today. I want to leave everybody with that. And you're gonna come back again, and we're gonna talk about the divine download. How's that?
That sounds amazing. Look
So
forward
let
to it.
our audience know again, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to discovertheedge.com / I actually created a designated page for you / talk to Brazil. And there are some free giveaways there. I've got a couple of PDFs, Transforming Your Business into a Force for Good, 7 Keys to Maximizing Your Potential. You can access the book that you mentioned in the beginning, Power Up Superwomen. And you can also schedule some time to, if you want to chat with me about your specific situation. So that's discovertheedge.com / talk to Brazil. And you can listen to my podcast at leadersoftransformation.com, and love to continue the conversation further.
Very good. You can be sure we're going to have you back on again, okay?
Look forward to it, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also like to thank our audience and invite everyone to visit our site, which is talktobrazil.com. And you'll be able to follow the links to the Talk to Brazil business directory, where you'll find a list of competent professional service providers, as well as today's podcast with Nicole and the sites that she mentioned to her, leadersoftransformation.com and also discovertheedge.com. So with that, I'd like to say that today's program was brought to us by Focus MI Marketing Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research in the ever-growing agribusiness sector of Brazil. And for more information, check out focusmi.com. That's FOCUSMI.com. You can always send your suggestions or comments and find me at tom@talktobrazil.com. Or on LinkedIn, we also have the Talk to Brazil group, and follow our discussions. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.